Wow, we have a great turnout tonight. Thank you all for coming. My name is Sandy Golding. I'm president of Beaches Watch. And for those of you who may not know about Beaches Watch, we are a nonprofit, nonpartisan civic organization here at the beach. Our membership consists of residents of Atlantic Beach, Neptune Beach, and Jacksonville Beach. And our focus is educating and engaging citizens in the issues that come before our elected officials that affect our quality of life here. So we do these monthly meetings, and we're glad to see this great turnout tonight. I'm sure it's because of Bill and the things he's going to talk about, and so I won't take too much time. I would like to recognize, before we get started, some of the elected officials that we have here. To begin with, I want to recognize Atlantic Beach Mayor Mitch Reeves. And Atlantic Beach Commissioner Dr. Blythe Waters. I'd also like to recognize Jacksonville Beach Councilwoman Chris Hoffman. We have Jacksonville Beach's City Manager here, George Forbes. I'd also like to recognize Neptune Beach City Councilwoman Kara Tucker. And Neptune Beach City Councilman Scott Wiley. And then I'd also like to recognize Jackie Smith, who is with Andrew Crenshaw's office. And is there anyone else I've missed?
We've got Donna Mel, the city clerk is here for the
Okay, Donna Bartle. Well, is that your last name still? Okay, I'm sorry. Well, because I didn't know if that was your married name or, okay. Donna is perfect, thank you. Donna Bartle, who's the city clerk for Atlantic Beach. Okay. Now, I hope everybody, when you came in, that you got one of these agendas and you will take it home with you, because we've got some information on here that we hope that you will find helpful. And we also have on the back contact information for all of our elected officials. So if you have any questions, comments, or concerns, this is how you're going to get in touch with them, including Mr. Gulliford, our honorable city councilman for Jacksonville. I also want to recognize that, or at least make you aware of the fact that we do record these meetings, and so if you know someone who was not able to attend, we will have the meeting video up on our website and on our Facebook page and on our YouTube site, and the YouTube URL is on this agenda, and it should be up probably by Sunday or so, and and you can also go and look at the previous meetings that you may have missed or you might be interested in. Also want to remind everybody that it's with the beginning of the year, we are having our membership drive, and we hope you'll renew your membership, $10 for a individual membership, $15 for a family. And that's important because if you're a member, you can come to our member social, which is going to be next month, which is Wednesday, March 2nd from 6 to 8 p.m. at the Beaches Museum. Thanks to Chris Hoffman. She's working with us, and we'll be hosting our social there again this year. It was great last year. We will have food, and we'll have prizes, we'll have some fun, and we're also going to present the Friend of the Beaches Award. So that's the next thing I want to mention. We recognize an individual, a business, or an organization every year with our Friend of the Beaches Award, and the focus is recognizing somebody or some organization for their exemplary contributions that have resulted in a positive impact on our quality of life at the beaches. So there's some information here about what we would like for you to send us in the way of a nomination, and we hope that you will send the nominations to us before Friday the 12th of February, and then we'll be making the announcement and doing the presentation at the member social. Also want to let everybody know that Jackie Smith is going to be having Andrew Crenshaw's congressional district hours in February in the Jacks Beach City Hall. And there are 2 dates. There's Thursday, February 4th, which is tomorrow, and that's going to be from 2 to 5 p.m., and then Thursday the 23rd from 9 to 11 p.m. Do you want to say anything, Jackie, about these hours?
It's just so that it makes it easier for you all if you want to come, if you have an issue with a federal agency. I'll be happy to talk with you about it and get your privacy release there. And George Forbes and Christine have given me a little office right there on the first floor. So there we are. The closet. It's really a closet with a desk. You don't take that closet.
Well, but it works, right?
Yeah, exactly.
And I'd like to recognize Mayor Latham, who just came in, Mayor of Jacksonville Beach. Okay, are there any other, oh well, and then Jacksonville Beach City Councilwoman Janelle Wilson just came in, and we'd like to recognize her. Any other announcements that anyone would like to make before we move to our speaker? Okay, I don't believe that there's a whole lot of introduction needed for our speaker for tonight, but Bill Gulliford, everyone knows, is our representative on the Jacksonville City Council, and he is here tonight to talk about all things Jacksonville and how they affect the beaches. And we'll have an opportunity for you guys to ask him questions when he's done with his presentation.
Thank you, Sandy. Before I get started, I want to recognize that Nelson Van Leer, the city manager of Atlantic Beach, is with us tonight. I hope I don't disappoint. There's a lot of good TV programming going right now, including the University of Florida versus the Arkansas basketball game, which frankly, I'd rather be there watching that than be speaking here tonight, but that's a whole different story. This is sort of my last rodeo, like Manning said. I'll be turned out in 3 years, and we just go off into the sunset after that, don't we, Rick? But I always enjoy coming in and having an opportunity to speak to people that I love in the community that I love, because this has been a long time as my home, starting back in the early 50s in Neptune Beach, and other than the military service and going away to school, I've spent my whole life here, and so I've gotten to know an awful lot of people, and I love this community and what I've watched it evolve into. It is, I think Charlie Latham has said, it's 3 beaches but 1 community, and that's how we've been. And before I go any farther, too, I want to recognize the Friends of the Library, because you may not be aware, but the Friends of the Library have raised $25,000 for landscaping and beautification of the outside. And I think that's a wonderful thing. I think we should civil stand up, because you're a big, y'all want to be a future. You're the first friend I could identify, so I picked on you. But we need to come up with about $5,000 a year to maintain it. I think they're talking to Barbara Gubbin. If the city of Jacksonville's got to get involved, I'm going to see whatever I can do to make sure that comes to fruition. I'm just going to bounce around and talk about some things. And lastly, before I get started, I really appreciate the young people that are in the audience. I see some young folks here. Back in the day when I was your age, we used to have classes called civics. And it was very valuable. We learned in class about government. And unfortunately, as time went on, I don't think you all have civics, but I think they're getting ready to reinstitute civics in school. Have you got it now? Well, that's already happened, and that's a good thing. Because we have civics. That's why they're here. Well, that is great. Good. All right. And seriously, we went a number of years without it, and we see the results. People like me get elected. Let me talk to you about a multitude of things. Let's start off with Mayport. Mayport has been a neglected asset of this community for a long time, and you're probably all aware that Jacksport went in and bought up the riverfront with the idea of a cruise terminal being there, which was ill-conceived. And now it's just languishing, and so we're trying to take some steps. We proceeded to create what's called a community redevelopment area, And the idea behind it is it's basically tax increment financing. Any growth of property values in a neighborhood or an area like that, once you establish the base, goes to redevelopment. You saw the result of that type of financing in Jacksonville Beach. Regrettably, as we look at this thing more and more, even pulling in areas of Mayport that aren't part of the village itself, it looks like it's going to be a difficult push to realize enough money in the immediate future to do anything meaningful. So what we're approaching right now is a deal between the city of Jacksonville and Jacksport to incrementally develop that riverfront, with the City of Jacksonville Economic Development Group taking the lead. We recognize we're probably going to have to offer incentives to get people interested in it. We probably have to do it, partition it to get economic development started in there. I mean, all of us have that vision, and there's been a number of charrettes and studies and suggestions as to how you would develop it. Ultimately, I think what the people of Mayport and the people of the beaches want is a development that would have shops, restaurants. It would be a destination, and that would in itself would aid the ferry. You know, the fight and the struggle we've had, although I have to report to you that the ferry is in very good stead right now financially and moving ahead. It's regrettable that we have to shut it down every couple of years to pull the boat to do maintenance and repair and inspection. Maybe there's some answer in the immediate future with a second boat that would allow us to do that. But redevelopment is going to be tough, but we are committed. I made that commitment to those folks in Mayport that it would be one of my top priorities to get that done. There's a little park area to the side of the landing that I've proposed that we redesignate that as park property and that we develop it, maybe put up a memorial, some type of maritime memorial, landscape it properly, and have a place for people to sit. And there have been a number of small events that take place there. Most recently, there was a memorial for the Alfaro crew that took place there. So I think it would be a good thing. I'm including a new community center in Mayport in the sixth year CIP plan. I think that the modular building up there that they use, which is well used, has seen its days and served. I think we need to make that kind of commitment to Mayport. And then we're going to do some other things with respect to Mayport. I talked today to someone about planting trees and dressing Mayport up. Mayport really could be a fantastic place for not only for the community, but for attracting people from outside the Mayport area. All of you have read a little bit about the BJP tax extension to pay down the pension liability. And I've already heard, well, what's in it for the beaches? And I've already heard that from George Forbes, obviously. That's the first guy I heard it from. Let me explain it, or try and simply explain what this would do. The extension wouldn't take place, or the extension of the infrastructure tax that's being collected now wouldn't have any impact until 2030. That's when it would kick in. Now you say, well, how does that help? Well, the way it helps is that skews or changes drastically the actuarial projections of how much money the city has to contribute each year to the police and fire pension fund, especially the unfunded portion of it. So what it would cause would be a substantial reduction of contribution by the city each year. And the beaches, according to statutory law, any county tax like that ends up being passed through. The revenue gets passed through on a proportional basis using some type of population formula. So you could say, well, the beaches in 2030 would start collecting their portion of that Better Jacksonville tax. But the legal question is, would that be limited to use only for pensions? And I'd submit to you that if it was, that wouldn't be particularly beneficial to the beaches. And if they're not going to start seeing any benefit until 2030, then it's marginal also as to immediate solutions for any problems that beach communities have. So what I hope to do is if the legislature passes this thing, then we have to adopt an ordinance to put it on the ballot for people to vote. At that point, that's when I'm going to do my negotiating for the beaches with George Forbes' foot in my back. that is when we really have some leverage. Because what they don't want, if it's a close vote, because it's going to have to go to referendum, as I said, if it's a close vote, they want the beaches behind this thing. They want all of you behind this thing. And so my idea would be that we will negotiate that Jacksonville will start immediately passing revenue on to the beaches without any conditions as to how it can be used, because, as I said earlier, it's going to free up a lot of money in the general fund each year, so that money, some of that money is accessible to do that for the beaches. And I think that that all of the beach communities certainly can use additional revenue. Neptune Beach is probably, because of the situation they're in, being so built out and without the ability to drive significant increases in revenues in the years to come. It's probably even more significant for them. But that's basically how, and if anybody has any questions in a minute about that specifics, I want to talk to you about the biggest problem that I see in the city of Jacksonville. You may say, well, I don't care about anything going on the other side of the ditch, but you have a stake in it, I assure you. You recently saw a 22-month-old child was killed in a drive-by shooting. And of course, the immediate reaction was, well, let's kick in another $500,000 to provide more policing. But I'd submit to you that that is simply a reaction to a symptom, and we're not addressing the cause. And the cause is the degradation and decline we're seeing in neighborhoods. You know, we've got neighborhoods that you could probably define as war zones right now. And it reminds me, when I was mayor of Atlantic Beach many years ago, we had a similar type area, much smaller, but it was called Francis Street, ran parallel to Mayport Road. Hard for people to conceive that something like that could exist in Atlantic Beach. I mean, the image of Atlantic Beach, especially for people on the other side of the ditch, is, and all those uppity, wealthy, high-rent people living there. But actually, when I used to ride with our police officers, they told me, don't go down Francis Street alone at night. Matter of fact, probably just don't go down there alone at all. It was all the problems that you saw, abandoned houses that you see now happening in a much larger scale in Jacksonville. Abandoned houses, crack houses, all the other societal problems that you might expect. So we went in there and we made, and I recognize Desmond Waters, he was on the commission at that time. And I think the commission made a strong commitment to that street, and we went in there and we cleaned up the park and made it better and expanded it, and we created a community development corporation of citizens that lived in that community, and they got behind things like neighborhood cleanups on Saturday, and we'd have picnics in the park to pay them back for their efforts, and it was a really concerted effort to do that, and at the same time Habitat went in there and started building houses, and now that anybody that drives down Francis, I think, would admit that it's a really good neighborhood, and it's safe. And the best policing that we have in that neighborhood are those mothers and grandmothers sitting on that front porch. Because what you have to do to take back a neighborhood is you've got to give those people the opportunity to feel safe so that they can be engaged in that neighborhood. We have over 13,000 abandoned and vacant properties in Jacksonville right now. Foreclosed, abandoned, and vacant properties. When you get your mind around that kind of number, I can take you in places in the city that would just blow your mind as to conditions. And until we do that, how can a kid in an environment like that have any chance at all? I mean, certainly the physical conditions do have an impact on that kid and the chances that that child has of growing up and doing the right thing. So I think the issue here is, for you all, is, yes, it's in Jacksonville, but guess what? There are no physical impediments, because we've got the bridges over the intercoastal waterway. It keeps the bad guys from spreading out and taking advantage of good people in places like Riverside, San Marco, Mandarin, and the beaches. We have to stop it. At some point, we have got to take a community approach, an all-encompassing community approach to fix this thing, and everybody's engaged because of it. Jacksonville Journey is a good first step, but it's going to take more. Affordable housing is a critical component to this, because at some point in every neighborhood, and all the studies indicate this, there is a stabilization point you reach when you hit a certain percentage of homeowners in that neighborhood.
Doesn't say that the neighborhood has to be upscale. It just says that the percentage of home ownership does have positive impact on a neighborhood to stabilize it because you have people engaged that care about their neighborhood. So as that's going to be one of my big priorities in my remaining 3 years, and it's not because I don't love the beaches and aren't focused, which I am on the beaches, but I think we have a community problem that really, really needs to be addressed. I want to thank George Forbes because he's been engaged. You know, we're redecking the pier. They're working with us about improving the appearance, which has been described as sort of like looking similar to the entrance to Rayford. And it's, you know, it's not very attractive, is it, George? So we really want to clean that up. My hope is, and I'm not putting any pressure on him because he can't be pressured. My hope is that ultimately Jacksonville Beach will take over the pier because and if they do, I want it to be to their advantage, significant advantage. It's not time, and I understand that. And I don't want to see that done until they really want to do it. The city wants to do it. But I think that they would do the better job because it's right in the middle of the community. Even though it's a county asset, it's a heck of an advantage to maybe having them controlling it and improving it to the extent of programming, etc., but not at any expense to Jacksonville Beach. And my hope would be that they actually could gain financially from doing it. Park improvements. Boy, did I step in that. I sent out this letter I got $100,000, and I sent out this letter to Jacksonville Beach and Neptune Beach, Atlantic Beach, and said, hey, you know, breaking it up sort of by population proportion, you get this and you get that, and send me a list of your projects and your projected costs. Well, I'm here to tell you tonight, for those of you that are elected officials from those communities in the room, I'm rescinding my letter. I found out that I've only got $75,000. So, no, I'm just going to plead with you to be gentle and kind on the number. I gave you ranges, so would you please stick at the lowest range that I gave you and not the higher range? But I think it's a good thing. What happened was that district councilmen, 14 district councilmen and women in Jacksonville, there was an accumulation in a fund called Lava, which is a mitigation fund, and we decided instead of just having all that money languish around, we'd split that up and give $75,000. We gave $100 before, but now it's $75,000 to each district council member to do with as they saw fit, and that's why I thought it would be appropriate to extend that to the 3 beach communities, also a little bit to Mayport. And I have part of San Pablo, the Eunice Road. There's a park on Eunice Road that needs a little bit of attention, but as I said before, please be gentle.
Too late.
Say that, Charlie?
Too late.
I want to share something else. I don't know how many of you are aware of a program that Betty Burney started called I'm a Star. Anybody who knows, who's familiar with I'm a Star? It's an incredible program that's spreading through the city. I've been after her for several years now to bring it to the beaches. I think it really needs to be at the beaches, and she's empowering kids like nobody else has done in this community, and has them engaged, had these kids get active in a whole bunch of efforts. For instance, they were raising money last year to fund feeding homeless kids in the Duval County school system, and they did a phenomenal job. I mean, we're talking about their ability to raise money and to engage in such programs is really not getting the publicity that it deserves. They do plan, she does say that she's coming to the beach, but she gave me some statistics that I think you as beach residents need to be aware of. And I'll just hit on a couple of them, because it's her perception that we've got some problems in the beaches community, in our middle schools and in our high schools. For instance, you probably didn't know that middle schools and the beaches had the highest percentage of middle school students in the district who carried a weapon for protection. You might not know that we also had the highest percentage of students in the district who actually carried a weapon on school property. Or the fact that we had the highest percentage of middle school kids that were electronically bullied. This was all based on a study that was done of students from 2009 to 2013. The other statistic that was surprising to me was that we have the highest of all health zones in Duval County, the highest number of kids who smoke in middle schools and beaches. And then the really disturbing one is when you get into the high schools is the use of alcohol and drugs. Unfortunately, we have the distinction of being the highest in the county in some of those categories too. So if we can get Betty, and Betty focuses on these kinds of things with her programs, if we can get Betty out here, I think it would be beneficial to the whole community. So if you see something coming called I'm a Star, I would urge you and plead with you to please embrace it. It's really, really a good program, and she's a former school board member who has a passion, obviously, for kids, and she has dedicated herself to doing this thing with very little return and not enough recognition. So I think it's going to be critical that we do that. Now for my favorite part of the program, let's ask questions. How about that? And I'll try and give you an intelligent answer. Yes or Roy?
I think you rightfully point out we have a huge crime problem, and there's whole neighborhoods where people don't even visit towards it. Scott and I both served on the Jacksonville journey.
Yeah, I know you did.
But where do you start in this circle of problems? Like, where do you make these and finally push things forward, you think?
We're not moving fast on turning those thousands of properties over. I mean, we've got 700 and some properties that the city owns, residential properties that we've received back because of court action, liens that have brought us those properties, etc. But we're not turning that stuff fast enough. I think what it's going to take is a street-by-street focused effort. If you look at successes, Baltimore is one that we heard a presentation on. Detroit, believe it or not, is doing a very good job in that area because they've established land banks, and I'm all over land bank. The problem we have with establishing land bank is that the Florida legislature has never passed any laws or statutes that would help us in the land banking effort, whereas states like Michigan have. And that's given them the opportunity. For those of you that don't, basic, simple explanation of a land bank is you create this entity in a defined zone. And that entity has a lot of power established by law in that it assumes all of the city-owned properties, any other properties that are donated. It can buy properties. It can, in some instances, even condemn properties. And they take the politics out of it, and they may sell properties, they may donate properties, but they have conditions on that of whomever they're either donating or selling it to has specific conditions or terms with respect to how they use that property as providing affordable housing. You know, we have an affordable housing crisis right now. We have all these homeless people out there on one side. We got all these empty houses out there on this side. Why couldn't we just bring them together? And I mean, that sounds pretty simplistic, doesn't it? But that's true. And we not only have, here's another problem you got. It's not just affordable housing that you might provide for some young couple to buy or to move into this thing. You talk to Cindy Funkhauser, who's a beach resident, Sulzbacher runs the Sulzbacher Center. The fastest growing population of homeless people is mothers with children. And when you really think about it, that's not necessarily surprising, especially when the economy goes south. Because here's a mother, she's living paycheck to paycheck, she's got a couple of kids, the husband is left, whatever, and she's surviving on her own, and suddenly she loses her job. And she doesn't have a savings account or something to fall back on. So suddenly she's thrown into a position where she's thrown out of her apartment. Where does she go? She doesn't have a job. She's now on the street. And kids are on the street. Population of homeless kids in Duval County school system a couple of years ago when they were doing this, almost 2,000. 2,000 kids that are living in the back of a car or wherever and going to school. So you've got transitional housing we need for veterans. That's a big problem. You talk to somebody like 5-Star Veteran Center that they run over on Atlantic Boulevard where they're trying to rehabilitate these returning veterans with problems, especially the younger ones, PTS and all these other difficulties. They'll tell you that their biggest problem is that once they start getting these kids turned around, they don't have any place for them to live. They need transitional housing. They've got some on site, but it's very limited. So this whole neighborhood issue really, I think, revolves around the availability of affordable housing and the accessibility of it to people of all conditions and situations. What else? Yes, ma'am.
This question's for my government meeting project.
Mm-hmm.
What is your email?
What's my email? Sure, that's easy. You ready to write? GULLIFORD at coj.net. Oh, Sandy helped you, huh? She didn't have to write even, does she?
And the cheat sheet, there you go.
That's right. That's very good. Yes, sir.
A couple of questions. With murder rate and pension being probably the two biggest issues facing the city of Jacksonville. And on the pension side, I mean, it's truly a lack of fiduciary role, responsibility, not just on, but I mean, auditors, city, everything, you know, when all broke and came out. So right now, I mean, I'm assuming the sales tax, I understand you've got to, you know, you've got to stop the bleed. You can't keep snowballing going forward, but will it ever be moved, or will it continue? The argument is it may cost too much, but whether it was legal or not, subpoenas being going to be fulfilled.
We have subpoenas outstanding. As chairman of the finance committee, I had subpoenas issued on both the fund and Mr. Clausner, who's been the attorney to the fund for a number of years. And I set up a subcommittee that's studying those and asking more questions, and they should probably report back to finance in a couple of weeks. If you want me to be very candid, and of course I've been in the middle of that for about a year and a half, 2 years, and advanced legislation to reform it. That was a fight. Fortunately, we got it through because we killed the 30-year agreement, and we changed governance, and we stopped the benefit bleeding and did a number of other things in it. So to be perfectly candid, I think you had a very poorly operated fund for a number of years. If you compared it to other funds around the state, you found out that it was the worst performing and the most expensive from an administrative cost. That became obvious to me about 3 years ago, and so we started hammering it. Would this fix it? Yes, I do believe. A combination of that, and we've got some good people. They're looking, you know, this gal, Beth McCabe, has stepped in as acting executive director, replacing John Keene. She's a wonderful human being, and she's doing it for the community. That's her own intention. Beth doesn't need the money. She's been successful in her life. So she's doing the right thing, and they're interviewing people right now, and they'll get somebody professional. And there's been a change. Willard Payne will be confirmed as one of the trustees at the next council meeting. For those of you that don't know Willard Payne, he's a very successful man in Jacksonville, and owned a number of McDonald's franchises, gave back, has given back, and still gives back a lot to the community. Very committed. Get people like that on boards that really care about the city, and that helps immensely. And so I think that we have, the other thing that was in the legislation that we passed was an investment advisory committee, which we've already got the commitment. For instance, a gentleman that does that for the CSX Railroad has agreed to serve on that committee, that investment committee. So I think we're going in the right direction. Listen, it's hard to clean up years of abuse and mismanagement and problems in the span of a year or two. It took you many years to get there. It's going to take us a little while to clean that up. But we're trying our best. Charlie.
Just to kind of piggyback on that, I was at Tallahassee for the Tax and Finance Commission committee meeting with Mayor Curry addressed the legislature about this, and a couple of things that I think everybody needs to know. Mayor Curry was asked in that meeting if he knew of any other city in the country that was closer than we were to being in Detroit, and he said he did not. He also acknowledged that the pension unfunded liability for Jacksonville is 25% of the entire liability.
Yeah, $10 billion is the state's unfunded liability. We're 2.5, and I challenge, you know, that includes the general employees fund. The problem we've got with it's over $1 billion liability, unfunded liability. The difficulty with that is that may be a bogus number because The actuarial rate of return that's used on police and fire is 7%. It's 7.5% on the general employees fund. If you reduced it to 7, that's going to have a negative impact on the unfunded liability, and you may have a bigger number, but you're right.
Well, the other thing, though, that it's important for everybody to understand is it's a battle to get through the legislature. Right now, it's very positive in the House. It's a little iffy on the Senate. The governor's got to sign it. It goes back to you guys. You have to get a super majority. Then it goes on the referendum. And then it's up to all of us to understand what the alternatives are if we don't do this. And the alternatives, quite frankly, are abnormal tax increases or property tax.
That's right. I don't see a whole lot of other options. He's absolutely right about that. But I'm going to make the deal so great for the beaches. 99.8% of people are going to vote for it.
It'll be recorded.
Because I'm going to have George helping me on that one. Right, George? Yes, ma'am.
I was just going to ask you, were you aware, when you were talking about Betty Birdie, she'll probably be this Saturday. This is a freebie for anybody in the county. It's called the Symposium for Urban Students, and it's been happening for 8 years. And it starts around 8:30 in the morning at the city library. It goes all day, and free lunch, and they bring in some magnificent speakers to talk about
That's the
some of
downtown
issues.
library.
Yes,
Yeah.
some of the issues that you were discussing.
That's good.
Yeah.
That's good. Hey, but before I forget, I want to tell you all a quick story that you may not be aware of. Do you know that there's a state program that allows for down payment assistance on housing? How many people, right? Show of hands, did you know that? Okay, let me tell you what this deal is. There are only 4 counties in the state that are currently qualified. There's a $50 million fund out there for this. And what it does is it says there are 2 programs, but each one of them have up to $15,000 of down payment assistance. So you could theoretically get $30,000 worth of down payment assistance. It requires, one of them says you can't have more than $68,000 worth of family income, and the other one says you can't have more than $88,000 worth of family income. And they are forgiven, one is forgiven over 10 years and the other one is forgiven over 5 years. So I see some wheels turning as I look out at the crowd, but anyway, I just wanted to make you aware of that. And if you want more information, call my number, you got it on the thing, and Carol can put you in the right direction if you know somebody that needs some help, etc. Yes, sir.
2 points I'd like to bring up. One is this recent murder in the African American community. As I looked at the picture in the paper of Mayor Carter crying, it occurred to me that we have a serious situation in America regarding the African American situation. Somebody asked, what can we do to help change this? Well, it's a systemic problem. And I want to point out a couple of things. This is the 3rd day of African American History Month. We're dealing with a lot of issues. Mass incarceration is one. Police brutality is another. I don't think there's been a time in American history where there has not been double-digit unemployment in the African American community. You can't raise a family on $7.50 an hour. We have the issue right now. I was listening as I was coming in here about a new drug that's out that has entered into the white community. Many years ago, crack cocaine came out, began to punish African Americans who used it twice as much as the whites who used it. But now heroin is on the rise. Has been for a while with white community. But no doors are being kicked in. No mass arrests are being made. There are no mandatory sentencing going on. Now we're kind of insulated and isolated out here. On the the only African American in this room tonight. But there are African Americans who live out here. And I don't think they feel that they're really part of this community. So until those things are addressed, and I'm 69 years old, until those things are addressed, we will continue to have a community because of the degradation. We will continue to have these killings, sorry to say. When you reduce a community to having one economy, and that's drugs, you got a problem. I can't tell you how many jobs have been eliminated in the African American community. You all know how many industrial jobs have left America. Those were the jobs that African Americans used to pull themselves up, build the middle class. They're gone. So I want you to keep in mind what has to be done before this stops. You can have all the mothers sitting on the porch if you want. Until there's a movement built to address these issues in America, we're going to continue to have this problem. The other point I want to address, the City Council and Governor did mention, there is an HRO for vote by the City Council in Jacksonville. I live in Atlantic Beach, and we have protection for the LGBTQ community. And having grown up in the days of segregation, legalized segregation, and having experienced having to stand up on a bus, not sit at a lunch counter. When visiting my parents, my grandparents in South Carolina and Virginia, it bothers me greatly that people are being judged on their sexual orientation as to whether or not they can have protection under the law. And I, for one, don't think, as an African American who's experienced segregation and bigotry, that somebody should have to vote on a person's rights. I think that's absolutely wrong. I think that what is happening in our country today is appalling. When we think about the freedoms that are being denied people because of their sexual orientation.
Sir.
So I'm going to finish up.
Yeah,
because my question to you is why have you decided to put up for the vote whether or not we will have an inclusive HRO? The question that I have for you, another question, is since it's been proven there will not be lawsuits, I want to know if we will withdraw that proposal you have.
No, sir, I'm not going to. If you'll permit me to speak, because I think you've kind of dominated the conversation. So if you're finished, I'll address both of your points.
And I think I have a right to explain what's happening. So.
Okay, you finished?
All
right, let me take your first point as far as the issue of African Americans, and I'm very familiar with it. I've gotten very close to a number of people in the African American community in Jacksonville. I've spent a good bit of time in Durkeeville and the surrounding areas. I have a good grasp of what's going on and what has happened. Yes, it's an economic problem. I think we probably point too much that it's racial, because I can take you into white neighborhoods on the west side, and the Children's Commission will tell you they have bigger problems in those areas than they have in the predominantly African American community. As far as being inclusive, I think this Beaches has been very, very inclusive. I think if you talk to some people like Lily Sullivan and other community leaders, African American community leaders, they will tell you firsthand that that is the case. I don't know how long you've lived here or how much you've really looked at that at the Beaches, and I'm only speaking of the Beaches, but I think that we have been very, very aggressive actually in being inclusive and involving them. because they're not here tonight, I mean, that's not an indication of a lack of interest and a lack of effort that we've put in especially in Jacksonville Beach. So I don't, you know, I'm sorry, I'm just not, I think it's more, as much as anything, it's socioeconomic. And yes, we've got some serious problems, but don't be misled by my statement about grandmothers and mothers. That's only one part of it. If they don't have jobs, we don't solve the problems. And the jobs generally need to be adjacent to those neighborhoods. So, as to the HRO, why I did that, it's very, very simple. 4 years ago, I was the chairman of RCDPHS, Recreation, Community Development, Public Health and Safety. Let's put aside your personal position as to whether you're for or against just for a moment. Let's talk about the practical side of it. I had 4 community hearings. Everybody got a chance, you know, they're talking about the mayors and what we had going on in city council. We had 4 of them. Everybody had a chance to speak their mind, one way or the other. At the end of that, we voted. Not once, but we voted twice. In both instances, it was voted down. Fast forward 4 years now, there was great political pressure brought to bear, financial political pressure by well intended, but certainly wealthy individuals that wanted to see this passed in Jacksonville. In fact, some of my colleagues were leveraged pretty heavily to make a commitment before they got financial contributions to take that stance and support. So you have a somewhat highly political environment right now that we're considering this thing under. But let's look at the options or the 2 scenarios as to what might happen. Mr. Missouri's bill could pass. Does anyone in the room think that if that bill passes that there won't be a referendum? Because I promise you, and I think you're going to hear this week, that there's going to be a number of petitions brought to that committee of the whole meeting to indicate that they feel like they have no problem raising the required number of petitions to put it on the ballot. So if his bill passes, just bet the farm that it's going to be on the ballot one way or the other. If it fails, 4 years from now, I'd suggest to you it's probably going to be back as an item that the community is going to be debating. My concern is an objective concern. This isn't about the position, my position, or any other position one way or the other. I think it needs to be addressed one way or the other. We need to get on with it. Let's vote it up, let's vote it down. I mean, I've heard the comments that people say, oh, well, you can't let the people vote on this. I'm sorry, I have greater trust in the people than that. And I think if both sides have an opportunity to present their sides of it, I've seen polling or heard polling indicating that either side could win this thing. I mean, we had somebody on the proponent side, the supporter, stand up in a public hearing and say, we've done polling and we think we can win. That was the supporters. I've heard polling on the other side that say, no, it's going to be defeated. I don't know, but at this point, I think it's time. We have so many important issues in this town that are ongoing. And I think in the testimony that you will hear before we finally get to a vote, there's going to be some objective professional testimony that might even call into question the need under the circumstances of existing federal law and state law. So let's give it a chance to be properly aired. We'll see how it goes. That's my reason for doing that, period, because frankly, if we're going to have it on a referendum, I'd rather have it now than drag it out and have this divide the community. And let me tell you something, it is dividing the community. It really is. Because I've got good friends on both sides of the issue, and they feel pretty doggone strongly. They feel real strong. And remember, I'm the guy that's had to sit through all of that and listen. And a lot of it's emotional. An awful lot of it's emotional. I've got to look at it and what you would expect from me and anybody else up there is to look at that objectively and fairly. Not because you want it to pass or you want it to fail, that because of personal experience or bias. That can't happen. At least from my perspective, it can't happen. So that's why I advance that legislation. We will see how it shakes out. I can't tell you, but I'm anxious to hear some testimony that's going to be forthcoming, and we'll see how it moves on. Anyway, anyone else? Yes, ma'am.
Yes, I just want to state my opinion on that. If the Civil Rights Act had gone to a vote to the citizens, it would never have been passed, is my opinion. And also, the ERA that did go to the citizens for a vote has never been passed. So at some point, someone has to take the bull by the horns and do the right thing, period.
Well, what you say is do the right thing, but that's your personal opinion as to what the right thing is. I can find people that are just as passionate on the other side of that issue that think the right thing is their right thing. So, you know, I mean, what are we as representatives of the body politic? We're supposed to read the sentiments because we represent. And so I can find just as strong a sentiment as you've expressed opposing your view about that. I have in my file from the last time 11,271 emails on this issue. 11,000. Huh?
I'll send you that.
That's fine. And if it's specific to me, I respond to it. If it's just one of those mini boilerplate emails, then I don't, obviously. But I do respond to the ones that are addressed specifically to me. Janelle?
Councilman, to change the subject, and on a live note, what's the chances of getting Second Avenue North that leads down to the boat ramp repaved to be done?
I talked to John Pappas about that this week. The prior Public Works Director didn't seem to think that it was much of a problem. I think I've gotten Pappas's attention in the office. We really need to get that addressed. So I'm putting pressure on him to do that.
With summer coming on and all boats, it's hard to get the boats down with all potholes and
Yeah.
it's underwater. A lot of the days just past fall, it was underwater. They couldn't get there.
Your city manager, who does a really great job, made me well aware of it, I assure you, on multiple occasions, for sure. So, yes, sir.
What's the status of the deepening of the river? Does the city council have a part on that?
Yeah, we're supposed to, I guess we'll be expected to fund a good bit of it. Frankly, I don't know where the money's coming from. You know, Charlie made an excellent point, is where do we get the money if this thing doesn't go through to fund the unfunded liability? And we can't, look, I've heard this, oh, we can just bankrupt the city. Really? Let me tell you what you'd have to do in order to bankrupt the city. We'd have to double your property taxes. No bankruptcy court is going to say, oh yeah, okay, you can bankrupt as long as there's space left on your taxing authority or ability to tax. They would just double your taxes because that would be the maximum that we could. And then if we look like we're in bad shape, yeah, we might be able, but we don't want to go there. That would have such a horrifically negative impact on us. I introduced legislation. There's a little-known fire tax on the books. It's never been used by any jurisdiction in the state. And it's really convoluted if we could get it to work. I don't even know. It still would require a referendum. You can't lock the use in. That's another bad thing about it. Even if you passed it, you can't say it's going to be used exclusively. That would be the intent, but some future council could change that. And it's the only other option. The other option would be 3%. We've got room to put a 3% additional franchise tax on the electric bills.
We could not deepen.
But that wouldn't,
Not deepen the river.
Yeah, well, that deepening the river is a whole different issue. Again, I'll go back to what I said. Where's the money come from? I've heard something said that the state might loan it to us, and we pay them back. What do we pay them back with? Again. See, in case y'all don't know, there was a sham that went down over the years. This stuff that you all got all excited about rolling back your taxes. I'm a politician and I'm rolling back your taxes. Aren't I just a swell and wonderful guy? And people fell for that. And what happened was, and you can look, the figures bear this out. What happened was, in order to offset the lost revenue, the city of Jacksonville was borrowing more money than they should have been borrowing. So now what we have is the bills come due, and we not only get to pay back the principal, we pay back interest too. And guess what? The JEA did it to you too. They didn't, instead of raising rates a little bit when they should have been prudently raising electric rates, they borrowed a lot of money to offset that revenue loss. You don't believe me? When I went on the rating, every council president has to go on a rating agency trip or goes on the rating agency trip when the JEA goes and does OEA to the rating agencies in New York in December of each year. And they get to ask you all kinds of questions. And the first question out of the rating agency's mouths at the time I went and subsequent times I understand is, how are you going to reduce your ridiculous amount of debt, JEA? Over $2 billion, well over $2 billion. But see, that's the kind of things that that you get the spin, you get the shallow version of things, and it's not explained as well as it should be or could be explained. And that's the difficulty we face on city financing. Let me tell you something about a great person down there. There is a gal that's going to be council president next year that everybody owes a great debt of gratitude, and that's Lori Boyer. Lori Boyer does not need this job. She's independently wealthy. She's doing it for the right reasons, and she is the smartest person on the council by far. And she has done a lot of things that will have great impact down the road years from now because of her diligence and because of her looking strategically long-term at things like the CIP and other things that have been so neglected over the years. So she's going to be great in the year to come. I'm glad to be able to serve with her. Somebody had, yes, sir.
My father taught at Ed White High School. My mother currently teaches at San Jose Elementary. And they constantly encounter children who were unable to attend school full-time because they weren't in stable housing. And I believe that if you want to improve these neighborhoods, you have to start with the children, and especially education. And I was wondering how you're going to combat this with your plan on restoring these areas. Well,
I think you hit on it. It's the first thing you got to do. I don't have any responsibilities or control over the school system itself. That's why they have a school board and they have separate taxing authority. But I think you're absolutely right. A kid coming out of an unstable environment, is vulnerable, very, very vulnerable. And what is that kid? What's the external influence on that kid? What does that kid see in that declining neighborhood? Drug dealers. How do I get to be at the level that TV shows me that how I could live? That fairyland that comes across the boob tube. Well, the only thing that he or she sees is some kind of criminal activity that gets them there in that environment.
When education could be the same thing.
Absolutely, we know that. But, I think the other travesty to all this, and I'll say this, I don't know about the educators, but I think the worst thing that's happened in these depressed neighborhoods is the elimination of neighborhood schools. And I've heard that from people in the African American community who feel very strongly about it. They've taken that away, and I think, how can a mother that is working one job or two jobs and has a couple of kids go attend a PTA meeting all the way across town because her kids are being bused there? She can't get engaged. And anybody that you talk to in education says the more parental involvement you've got, the better the kids do and the better the school does. So, these are just some of the systemic problems. That gentleman's right. I mean, a lot of things he said, and it's reflected in the African American community because of the conditions that they faced in the past. But I think it even goes beyond the African American community because, as I said, we've got other areas that are predominantly white. Let me give you this, and you brought up drugs. Here is a high school statistic that Betty Burney gave me. This is for the beaches, high schools at the beaches. Highest current cocaine use one or more times during the past 30 days. High schools at the beaches, highest of all health zones in Duval County. This isn't in a predominantly African American area. Current marijuana use, highest of all health zones in Duval County, higher than the county and state percentage. Lifetime meth use, highest of all health zones.
What's the date of that survey?
It's 09 to 13. It was over, and it's, I don't know what's happened since then. Hopefully it's gone down. I mean, and I'm not, listen, this is not a negative thing, but I just want people to be cognizant that some of our societal problems, while we can feel pretty smug at the beach because we're isolated and we run a tight community and help each other, we do still have some problems, and that's significant problems. So, and I'm not the bearer of bad news, or I don't want to be, because I love it. But that's kind of bad news. Yes, sir.
If we're going to have a referendum on the HRO, which I think is important, should we have it in November on the agenda?
I don't have any problem with when we have it, to be honest with you. And we'll see how it shakes out.
What's the best turnout?
We're running out of time anyway, and I don't know what the deadline is to make it the primary, but we'll see.
June 24th, we're trying to do it in August, but I think there are better turnouts in November. That way you have more.
Well, if it goes that way, and I'm not assuring you that it will, because it takes 10 votes. If it goes that way, it'll be at the discretion of the council and my colleagues, but again, I don't have any heartburn about that, one way or the other. Anyone else? Last question before Sandy throws me off here. Well, you all have, yes, sir.
Real quick, FPL is going to, on the Northside Generating Station, with JEA, purchase it, shut it down?
Do I now? I'm sorry.
Florida Power and Light's coming in to purchase the Northside Generating?
No, that's a different station. That's different generating. We still have the deal operating coal-fired plants, joint ownership and joint operation in St. John's Power Park. I think you're talking about the other FPL facility up there that they're getting ready to shut down. That's that, what was it, Cedar Bay, I think, or something like that. That's a separate deal. Well, thank you all very much. You're engaged.
It died long ago, Sandy.
All right, well, thank you all for coming tonight. I want to remind you that the member social is Wednesday, March 2nd, from 6 to 8 at the Beaches History Museum. Please RSVP if you'd like to join us, and we encourage you to bring non-members with you. It'll be a lot of fun, and we hope to see you March 2nd. Thank you very much.